What's going on, everybody? School Zone Noob here, back at it again with another moto vlog. So here's the thing. I've been thinking a lot about autonomous cars lately. I think the idea is really cool. I really want to see it fully implemented because I am tired of people driving themselves places. We should really be focusing on how we can make sure that everyone gets to where they're going safely and they don't need to drive to do it. Not even considering the fact that, you know, it'll be really good for industry and really good for the economy to have all those new jobs come up. I don't want to get into that. What I do want to talk about is how it will affect the motorcycling world, because I feel like that's what, you know, if you're watching my channel, probably into motorcycles, you want to hear the autonomous car discussion from a motorcyclist perspective, right? So I guess here's my predictions on what I think is going to happen. As technology gets more and more advanced, I think that what we're going to see is like autonomous only vehicle zones, probably in like really congested cities. I imagine a future where you have dedicated zones where either you turn on your car's autopilot and it does its thing, or like your car can only be autopiloted through there and it's autopiloted everywhere else as well. Because a funny thing is kind of happening right now to where, how to explain this? Okay, so to develop technology that's good enough to watch out for human drivers and like other autonomous cars is way harder than developing technology that was only autonomous cars, right? Building cars that are smart enough to know what people might do in certain situations is way harder than building a whole system of cars that, you know, can talk to each other via Wi-Fi, via Bluetooth, whatever it may be, that are all connected via the Internet of Things and can guide each other, right? So we might see a situation where we develop cars that can be automatically driven by themselves in human traffic, but are like good enough to do it by themselves that they were all automatic. Do you see what I mean? So I wouldn't be surprised if, you know, 10 or 15 years after we've gotten to the point where autonomous cars are pretty normal, that, you know, we get to a point where we're like, okay, we need to just convert all cars to fully autonomous because that's going to make things a lot easier. And that's a good question for motorcycles. It's like, well, where does that leave us, right? I imagine a future where, to be honest, I don't think motorcycles will be on the road anymore. I think that's just going to be because, you know, if every car on the road is autonomous, they won't want to deal with motorcyclists being on the road. It wouldn't make any sense. Because then those autonomous cars that were designed to function solely with autonomous drivers as well, like everything's autonomous. I feel like I've said that word like a billion times. You know what I mean though, self-driving cars. If they're all self-driving, they won't want to watch out for motorcyclists as well if they're all in that system. So I think what might happen, and this is more to do with energy as well, that most cars are going to convert to some type of electrical powered system that isn't dependent on fossil fuels. And then I think that motorcycles and certain sports cars, they're going to be relegated to like museums and as like track toys. Because if all the roads are, you know, operated by self-driving cars, there won't really be a need or a desire to have motorcycles or to drive yourself around. I also imagine a world where we don't necessarily own cars anymore. I imagine a world where you pay for a subscription service, much like Netflix or, you know, those weird little box subscriptions that people get. You pay for a subscription service that then gives you access to an autonomous car, you know, when you might need it, right? Because you think about what cars do nowadays, most of the time they're either sitting in your garage or sitting at the parking lot at work, right? You don't use them that often. A lot of the space we have in society is devoted to just storing cars for when they're not being used. And that's a really bad use of space, you know? That's like a really bad use of space. You think about all the parking lot spaces in the world, right? Imagine if those didn't have to exist. Imagine if an electric fleet of autonomous vehicles constantly circulated and were optimized to pick people up to wherever they needed to go, whenever they needed to go, right? Maybe you need to like call it on your phone and wait like 5 minutes and then it shows up. That's really not too bad, right? To be honest, I would absolutely love if that were the case. It would be so much cheaper for people, right? And that's a whole other discussion about how, you know, things over time, the cost tends to go down. And imagine if we didn't have to rely on ownership of vehicles. Imagine if you just paid, you know, $50 a month and, you know, at scale, everyone had access to mobility, right? Because that's what you're selling. You're selling mobility. So anyways, I think in the future, you won't see, you know, hopefully you won't see people driving themselves around. You won't see people on motorcycles. And I think it'll just be, they'll be relegated to something from the past. They'll be something that we look at as like, oh, wow, like people used to like have these motorized bicycles that they like rode around on sometimes, and oh my god, they even drove their own carriages, like these cars, like they would pilot them. You'll look at it in a museum and be like, man, no wonder like thousands of people died each month in car accidents, because you left it to people, like you left it to them to pilot these things. So I think that's what might happen with the autonomous car situation. It sucks because I feel like I won't ever teach my children how to drive a car. I probably won't teach them how to drive manual, that's for sure. And I imagine explaining to them by the time they're old enough that it's like, yeah, we used to like command these vehicles like with our own bodies. The whole concept will probably seem so foreign to them. It's kind of like how nowadays, like, you know, for example, I have one of my brothers-in-law. He has a 5-year-old daughter and a 2-year-old little boy. And I'm always fascinated by seeing their behavior because they're the next generation, you know? And one of the things they do a lot is if they watch traditional television, they're always blown away by it because they don't understand the concept of waiting for the program to come back, you know, to watch a commercial mid-program. They're so used to watching video on demand, like YouTube and Netflix, they don't understand why their show isn't on. It's really funny to see. And so I think much in the same way, you know, these kids are going to grow up and they won't even understand something like a garage or like piloting your own car. To them, it'll always just kind of work. It'll always just be this thing that's always been there, you know. And I hope it is, because that's progress. I think that this whole system we have in place, this whole infrastructure, is really backwards. Where everyone owns their own car that they use for like 2% of its total life, and that holds 4 people, but on average usually holds only 1 to 2 people at most at a time, you know. It's a very bizarre thing. It goes back to the whole concept of ownership, where, you know, most things in life, you buy them and you use them like twice, and then they just kind of sit there at your house. You know, it would be a lot better if we had services that could provide us things when we needed them, when we could reallocate resources in that way. But that's like a whole other topic that I could get into, but you know. But yeah, what do you guys think about the autonomous future, about self-driving cars? I personally can't wait. I can't wait to have self-driving cars. I think that's going to be super awesome. Because, like, for most people, they spend, what is it, I think like an hour in traffic every day? That's such a waste of time. Imagine if you could just sit in like a comfy living room and just wait to get to work. And imagine if it cost you less than owning your own car. I mean, and you know, some people, they might say that it's like, oh, but it's going to turn out to be like a bus, like nobody rides the bus. It's like, what if they were like, you know, if you had a tiered system? Because I know human beings are very much into status and all this stuff. So why don't you just tier it out and be like, okay, like you can pay $50 a month and have a basic transportation package, or you could pay like $100 a month and have like the middle tier, or you could pay like $300 a month and have the luxury transport package, you know? That would be cool. It's going to disrupt so many industries. It's going to be crazy. Like our entire transportation industry will get disrupted. I think in 100 years they'll look back on motorcycles kind of like how people look back at like a telegraph now. They'll be like, they did what? What? They're crazy. They're insane. They had an exploding engine between their legs and would travel around without any protection. That's madness. Oh, we got a cone coming up. Yeah, I welcome that future. I absolutely welcome the autonomous future. I think it's going to be so cool. Because right now, like, per month, my car probably costs me over $500 total, right? Between gas, insurance, and the payment. I guarantee you, if we had, like, a fully at-scale, subscription-based, like, autonomous fleet of cars constantly driving, it would cost less than $500 a month. And I think for a lot of people, that would make a lot of sense. I mean, how cool would that be? You know, you wouldn't have to get in your car every day to go somewhere. You could just, like, order it up on your phone, and then it shows up. And, you know, you could say the same thing, like, oh, but Uber already does that. It's like, well, Uber does it, but it's super expensive because you have to pay a human being to drive the car. Imagine if no one is driving the car, you know? Or imagine if you had, instead of, like, a couple Uber drivers, you have, like, hundreds of these because everybody demands them. So I think it's going to really change stuff. I think it's going to be really cool, and unfortunately I think the motorcycle will one day go extinct, you know, in highly developed countries, because I totally understand that, you know, in developing countries, motorcycles are not going anywhere because they're the cheapest form of transport.